Welcome back to the pod. We're going to be talking to AJ today. We met on Instagram in this booksta space, and we had a lot of really interesting conversations about a lot of different things from horror to politics and everything in between. And so when we started this pod, I said, I definitely want AJ to come on here. So welcome and thank you for doing this.
Well, thanks for having me. I was really happy when you said you wanted me on here, and I'm like, oh, somebody thinks I'm cool.
Oh, it's going to be fun. Don't worry. So, the first thing we always ask about, because it kind of started as a podcast where Rebecca was not a horror reader, and I always have been a horror reader.
Well, I was a horror reader, but I didn't know it.
Exactly. She hadn't labeled herself as a horror reader.
I didn't realize that human terrible behavior and shitty people and imprisonment and all that stuff actually counted as horrific.
And then she would read something and then have me read it. I think like the book most comes to mind, if I don't know if you've read it, but Jasmine Ward's Let Us Descend.
Oh my Lord.
I read this book and I'm like, this is a fucking horror book.
I was the first book
but I'll add it to the list.
Yeah. I think you will love it, and it is painful as hell.
It is painful. I had to genuinely stop and like pause because that was the first time I felt like a book actually caused pain in my chest and in my body of the cruelty that these enslaved people are enduring. And enduring is like, I mean, it's like relentless. And I'm like, how did this ever happen to people? Like, it's one of those things that, if you like anything in the South and you like just seeing how much of people were bastards at that time and, you know, the atrocities that we committed, and you feel like you want to just, you know, expand what you know, that you think I've learned enough about, the enslaved experience. No, you haven't.
Nope.
Not until you read this one.
There's something I've learned as I've gotten older is that the more you think you know, the less you actually know. It's better to be a constant learner in life. It's like once you get stagnant, then you should be worried about yourself. Like you need to continuously learn in different ways, and no matter what it is you're interested in, you should consistently find something to learn about. That's just kind of how I live my life.
Yeah, I think like I heard it somewhere. It's definitely not me, but someone said once you realize you don't know shit, you can finally learn something, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
I think that,
well, I wouldn't even just say that though. I mean, I think through the decades of, you know, what I learned in my 20s, what I learned in my 30s, I mean, I could probably read this book in my 20s and be like, that was crazy. Like that was painful. But like the older you get and the more you realize like with people, or you have your own traumatic experiences and just like working with society, or more cruelty and, you know, comes out, or like you witness it, all of a sudden it's like, wow, it hits a new level.
Yeah. I love how we're completely not fucking around and getting right into it this time. I love
That's what we do, Adam.
So, the point being that horror, you know, if a book is telling the truth, and if it is really looking at, you know, sort of society and life, most of the time it's either going to have a lot of horror in it or could really be considered a horror book. And that's kind of like where our conversation started and where we started this. But as we've been having these conversations, we've noticed so many people keep going back to the fact that they either horror has been a catharsis, a therapy for them, it's been a coping strategy, like all those kinds of things. So our conversations really have been centering around that. And I know that prior to talking about it, you kind of said like, hey, that's my story with horror too. So first, prior to sort of using horror as coping, and I don't know like exactly the timeline of, you know, history of things.
Right.
Growing up, everything, have you always been drawn to horror, the spookier side of things? You have, okay.
So I can just launch right into it if you want. Just a fair warning for everyone listening, I am a chatty Cathy. So but I'll try to get to the points more often, but I kind of meander. I have a bit of ADHD, a little bit of like chaotic energies at times. So I will try to reel it in a little bit. But so my horror journey, I actually have always been interested in horror. I was a kid that like always had nightmares for some reason, and that has carried on in my life quite a bit, and I'll get a little bit more into that. But instead of turning away from those fears, I leaned into it even as a young kid. And so the first horror movies. I actually watched two classics in the same night. So they were my first ones when I was 8 years old. And my would never let me watch them. So I only had to sneak horror movies when I was little when I went over to my friends' houses. And the first two horror movies I ever watched were Child's Play and then the first Nightmare on Elm Street.
Well, you weren't
And
you were walking around. My God.
I was not. And I'm pretty darn sure my friends were asleep during the second movie, but I don't remember which one we watched first, but they were asleep during the second movie at least. And I
God.
just watched it and I was like hooked. You know, like you would think that
Those are
that would scare the
two
shit
big
out of me.
fears.
Yeah,
What
those
were
are
you
the
saying?
ones that steered me away.
Yeah, Chucky and Freddy, I think, were the two that
Adam,
Rebecca was the most afraid of as well.
Adam just recently said, why don't we rewatch them as an adult? And I was like, no, I see it differently. I'm like, I don't want
Yeah.
to. We were just recently on our way back from Indianapolis and we stopped at this really cool horror themed coffee bar and
Oh.
all these amazing murals outside and so many Freddy Krueger murals. And I was like, nope, I'm not doing it. I'm not even fun.
I was like, let's get a good pose here. Come on, it's
Yep.
gonna be adorable.
To be fair, though, I can see where he would give people some of the biggest scares because he reaches you when you're the most vulnerable, when you're asleep, and
Yeah.
everybody has to sleep. You literally cannot avoid sleep because as much as you try to put it off, the harder it'll be. So I definitely see where people would find that scary. And you'd think as a kid that had a lot of nightmares growing up, that would have been like my ultimate boogeyman. I wasn't for some reason. It like fascinated me more than anything. Actually, my so since we're like on the subject, so my love of horror has kind of always been ingrained in me before the trauma that I experienced. So then I'll get into kind of how that's been cathartic. So having a love of horror already initially in my life actually really helped when I actually needed it to get through some of the things I went through. So I did grow up in an abusive household. And then, but like my trauma actually came when I was 13 and I was assaulted by somebody at a oh gosh, this is gonna be oh man, Adam, with one of our conversations, this is gonna be kind of along those lines. So it was actually a Christian camp that I
Yeah.
went
Oh,
to.
you're in the
Yeah,
right place today.
I know.
And
That's why
I'm
I said
sorry. I'm so sorry that happened to you, but yeah, we've talked so much about religious horror. So please, like whatever you're
yeah.
comfortable sharing. Yes.
Yeah, me and Adam have touched on the whole religion thing a little bit here. That's why I kind of mentioned like, oh yeah, Adam, one of our conversations it'll kind of align with this a little bit. But
Yeah.
so yeah, it
Rebecca's
happened
been
at a
doing it. Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
so it happened at a church like concert camp. It was like a 3-day thing where all of us kids go in and camp and everything. And there was this older boy, much older actually, and long story short, didn't take no for an answer. And that's how I, lost my virginity basically. And
Oh,
I didn't know how to contend with that. It's a lot of things that I think that people don't really talk about enough because everyone kind of talks about you feel kind of shame and so you don't really reach out, but really you feel like dirty. I felt dirty about myself and the world seemed dirtier, like the world seemed darker, to be honest. And I think that even
mhm.
though I had been subjected to some abuse growing up, I wouldn't say it's as bad as others have had it, but it wasn't compared to that. I still was a really bright young kid that really just had hope for everybody in the world. And once that happened, just it kind of like darkness totally like encompassed me. And I leaned into horror even more. Just it I would say maybe part of it is because anything really happy didn't feel genuine. So
Mm,
like I've always been a really big book reader. So like I attribute Harry Potter and horror to like my love of books, I'd say. But the Harry Potter thing, that's a whole nother political thing, right?
Yeah.
Too. Like, oh god damn it, you're right.
Right.
Did you
right.
have
It's
to
a
do
shame, but
that?
it definitely, it brought so many people into reading, and
It did.
the books
Yeah.
themselves do not have reviews, so fuck her. But
Yes, I
Harry
know.
Potter is still,
And the
you
thing
know,
with that is like I grew up with Harry Potter because at the beginning of the book he was 10. He turned 11 in July in the book before he goes to Hogwarts, and I was 10 when the book came out. So it was like,
wow, wow,
I got to grow up with them. So
yeah,
Harry Potter actually kind of helped take me out of the abusive household part. I got to be really enveloped
Okay.
into a fantasy world. But then when like the actual traumatic experience happened and everything felt dark, that's when I turned more into the darkness. What a lot of people didn't know that that was going on with me because I wanted to be liked so bad at school that you didn't see me stray too far from the crowd because I didn't feel like really loved at home. So I wanted to find that
Yeah.
in other places. And as an adult, I understand that I was searching for my value in other people rather than turning inward.
Right.
And that's therapy that helped me learn that. But as a
That you
kid,
can
you
put a
just
name to what, yeah. And,
yes.
I think a lot of people have those desires to seek that out. We just, like, initially, if you come from a
Yeah.
home that, is dysfunctional.
Yes.
I came from a dysfunctional home, and my family and I, we joke about it now, but I mean, like, if you come from a dysfunctional place, you often, are seeking to get your needs met in certain ways, and we all
Yes.
choose different outlets for that.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I was like the bright, and I've always been like used humor to deal. So I was always like the funny, outgoing person at school or with
Uh,
friends, but when I was alone at my
there's that
house.
whole thing of like, wow, you're so funny. And they say,
Yes.
thanks, it's the trauma.
No, when I saw that meme or saying or phrase, whatever it is that came out, it's like, thanks, it's the trauma. I went, oh my God, I have never found anything so relatable. Like, oh
Uh-huh.
shit.
Yeah, it's a nice little gut punch.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, as like a quick aside here, there was this, I never watched like that George Lopez show very often. Like, I
Uh-huh.
don't know, one day it was just on, and it just happened to be this comment and this take on dysfunctional families. And he was like, hey, he was like saying to his daughter, like, think about these other people when they go through hard stuff. Like, they're not going to have any resilience. They're not, but because you came from a dysfunctional family, like, you're way ahead.
Oh
And
yeah.
I was like, oh my God, that's such good news for me. And I remember sharing it with my dad, and he just laughed, rolling. He's like, well, I think there's some truth to that, but there is, right? Like,
It really is. You can, I don't know how to say that without sounding judgmental, which it's not. It's just that you can really tell the people who've been through it, and you can really tell people who really haven't.
yep,
That's just in my experience. It's not like there's anything wrong with either party, and everybody has their issues, and that's like another thing. Like it's like there's gonna be levels of things. It's like even though maybe the person I've seen this analogy before, it's like even maybe a person's in a full body cast next to you, but that doesn't mean your arm isn't broken. If like you're in the
right.
hospital kind of thing.
It's
Like
just
I'm like,
different levels of
yes,
intensity. And like,
yeah.
different people are capable of carrying different levels of weight, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I just I try to carry that
Doesn't
as
mean it's
like,
heavy to them.
yes, exactly. I feel like everybody's pain is valid. I feel like everybody's trauma is valid. It's just perspective that really affects the outcome of that pain. It's like how you react to that trauma, what you do to, I wouldn't exactly say fix yourself, but like what you do to actually like remedy the issue that's going on. And as we grow up and mature, like how do we let it affect the rest of our life and the people around us? And that's why I think perspective is what counteracts trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how would you so when you say you dug into sort of darker stories, horror, that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
what did that look like for you?
Started reading horror. So my first horror book, which my mom didn't even let me buy one, like actually get like a horror book. Like, 'cause it was a religious household. It wasn't like, Baptist kind of extreme, but it was, it was religious. Even like
Yeah.
my
And
mom had
especially
her
like I
friends.
feel like the late 90s,
Yes.
whatever
Yeah,
2000s is very much like, yeah.
yeah, my mom had her friends even saying like, Harry Potter's witchcraft. You can't let her
Yep.
read that. So my mom was like, okay, don't be dumb. So like she wasn't like extreme or anything like that. She's actually
Right.
a very kind liberal Christian, if you can believe it, but she's actually like very, very accepting. She's not the stereotypical one that you see a lot right now.
That's good.
So yeah, but she finally let me get a horror book. I think I was 16. So it was 3 years later. So I was watching a lot of horror movies before I was able to actually like get the books.
Yeah.
It was my first horror book I ever read was Stephen King's The Shining. That was the
Oh,
first one. Oh yeah. The bar, I tell you, the bar was set pretty high when I
you can
started
go
reading
hard into
horror.
any media. It sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like surprised. It actually did scare me a little bit, because I was already getting, I guess you could say, desensitized a bit. There were some movies and some books that still got me a bit, especially ones I hadn't encountered. But yeah, so that was my first book, and I was just like, yeah, being a whole nother world opened up. Holy cow. Like, because really our imaginations, especially with horror books and like fantasy books, I'll give them the credence of that too. Of like, really sometimes our brains can just create an even more intense world than
Oh,
what you can maybe even see on film. So I was like, whoa, my imagination's crazy. My head's out there. So
Do you
I
feel like because that book, like, when I think about that specific book, it is about abuse, it is about
it is.
trauma and all of those things. Do you think, like, because of that, you connected even more so with it?
I didn't think that at the time, but like as an adult, and I've talked about this kind of stuff like when I went back into therapy, because I was in and out of therapy, I'd say for like 20 years. I think my mom started putting me in therapy when I was like 14, went for a little bit off, and then I put myself back into therapy when I was 26. And then we started diving into all this, and I kind of did
Yeah.
discover like, oh, on some level, it was easier for me to actually connect to horror books than it would like, let's say, like romance books or something, because like there was that darkness inside me that I could feel all the time that was really hard to recognize in my surroundings or the people around me, so I would find it within these books. And so yeah, I definitely could connect a lot easier. And I don't know exactly if maybe when I was younger it was like, life's not that bad, look what happens to these people. Like, oh God. Like there are some things. And now I've leveled up to the point of where I need like splatterpunk books. I
I'm
need
like,
like
I'm
just
like,
I need disturbed, darker books in order to like really like even feel like it gets me. I think the first book that got me like, oh, okay, actually kind of gross, and it was my first venture into what would be considered disturbing horror, even though I kind of feel like it's really soft disturbing now because of how much I've read. But The Troop by Nick Cutter,
oh yeah,
yeah, a few years ago. I think that was what, 2022, I think. Like
yeah,
twenty
something
twenty
like
two,
that.
2023,
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah. A
some
few years
gnarly
ago.
body horror in that one.
Yeah, so there's body horror, and I don't think that I really, because I mean, I loved the movie The Thing, like John Carpenter's The
Yeah,
Thing. I love that movie, and that was my favorite body horror movie. And
yeah,
a lesser known one that I really like is The Void, too. I don't know if you guys have seen The Void.
yes, absolutely. That is a
Yeah,
very
that one was a fun ride. I watched that for the first time actually last year. I don't know why it took me so long to like watch it, but I was like, oh, okay, this one's really fun. It's
yeah. Is that
not a
Shutter
great
or is that True?
story,
I forget
but
what. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. So I definitely have connected to horror in a way that helps my trauma, whether it's to be like, okay, it's not so bad, or that I was able to find a kinship within the darkness that I would find in those and almost make it be like a safe landing spot, because if you walk through the world feeling your trauma, which I did for a
uh-huh.
really long time until I was able to go, like I said, back to therapy when I was like 26, go through cognitive behavioral therapy and kind of help to rework my brain a little bit and my perspective really on everything. That you can walk through the world with this trauma and this darkness, and because you can't see other people's, it's very much an internal invisible thing. And most people aren't open and vulnerable enough to just be like, hi, my name's AJ and I am having a terrible day today, like just like random
Yeah,
people,
right.
people don't do that.
It's so funny you say that because, I said to you before we got on here, I was like, I've always just been like a very authentic, open, like heart on
Hmm.
my sleeve type person, but that's how I always viewed myself. But then as I got older and as I'm going through like working through the diagnosis of ADHD, there's a
Yep.
lot of things like I just didn't get. So this one time had like a close relationship with this woman, Sarah, at a Methodist church. And I have nothing but good things to say about her, but her husband was a pastor at another Methodist church. And the one time he came through like my checkout line when I was working in the grocery store, she wasn't there to kind of like
say I know this person.
Yeah, and whatever, but just, to butter it up or whatever. And I was like, how are you doing? He's like, I'm fine. And he seemed like really grumpy. And I was like, no, really? Like, how are you doing? He's like you care. And I was like, I do. He's like, nobody answers that. Nobody ever cares. It's just something that you say. How are you? And I think it was just, and coming from a pastor, was disillusionment.
It's like, do you not care?
That's exactly what I felt like.
Yeah.
But I was like, at that point I was like able to be like, man, you're pretty miserable, sort of thing. And like, but I think it was my first insight into really like seeing that people lie when you say, how are you? Cause I always told the truth.
Right.
Well, it would be like, I'm Rebecca and I'm having a terrible day.
Yes, I would be what she's saying.
I love that. I am more like that now as an adult, because when that trauma stuff happened when I was a kid, I didn't know how to deal with that. When you're a kid, you don't really know how to deal with even just fitting in middle school and high school, and then you add a layer like that or come from a dysfunctional family, then you're just like, well, nobody's going to like me if they know about that, And so I would, I played it off like everything was fine. Now as an adult, I'm like, you know what? I'm not actually having that great of a day. And I'll just kind of launch into it. And it's just like, I would rather be honest and have people not like me for being honest than to have anybody love me for whatever persona that I am displaying that day, because
it's not actually you that they're loving, right?
Yes. Yeah. And that's something I've had to kind of recently come to terms with. Not that I did that, until recently, but I mean, I've had these friends, I had a lot of friends growing up because I was, fun and outgoing and everything with everybody. And as I became an adult, and I just couldn't hold on to that anymore, I guess. I couldn't hold on to just being okay in front of everybody anymore.
Yeah.
And once that started slipping, you really get to see who loved who you were in front of them and who was willing to love who you are, like behind closed doors. And
that's,
there are,
like, when you mirror that to like a horror story, like you think of a slasher, it really is like these people kind of fall away, right? And only the ones that are sort of more real and paying attention and have the empathy and those kinds of things stick it out. And it's like, you see that in your real relationships, as well. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, exactly. That is something I've noticed, especially like you said with slashers. It seems to be the genuine people are usually the last ones standing.
Right.
And I don't know
They're
if
paying
that's
attention, whatever it is that you want to say, that final girl or that final character, those qualities that they seem to have that the other ones are missing.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's really just like a nod at any sort of like social commentary, or if it's just like really satisfying to see like all the assholes get killed. Like, I don't know which way they're going with that, but
good mixture, right? Like, you definitely like to see those people get killed. But like, as it gets further towards the end, you think about like, once it gets past that, then it does start to get more sad as those people go away. And I think that sometimes like it kind of mirrors the same thing where you're like, I thought this was a real, like, you get rid of those assholes and you're like, I kind of knew they were assholes a little bit. But then you get to some other relationships and you're like, you too, and it really does kind of hurt.
It does, yeah. Sometimes there'll be movies. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I know I've seen some. But sometimes there'll be movies where they go long enough, or a series, like a horror series, where you think someone's a total jerk at the beginning, and then their character arc kind of starts to change. So when they finally are killed off, you're like, oh, I actually was starting to root for them. Or like, oh, they actually had been through a lot and they were masking and now they're gone and they didn't get a chance at redemption. Those ones get
Did you
me.
read the Indian Lake, the Stephen Graham Jones books?
I read the first one.
Okay, so in the first one, he's a high school student in the first one. He's named Banner, and he sucks ass. But then in the second one, you fall in love with him. Like what? Like, he does so many interesting things with that character, and it's a very similar thing that he does.
I'll have to read the second one.
I kind of spoiled it just bringing up the name based on what you said. No, but
no, it gives me something to look forward to.
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully, but yes, I see that in that character very much. Maybe like even in like what's it in the Scream movies, the one that they think killed the person in the first film, killed the mom, Cotton, and then he's in the second, and then gets killed at the beginning of the third one, and it's like there's something there, but he just kind of always ended up being an asshole. But like, he wrongly convicted. There is a lot of trauma there at the same
Right.
time,
Yeah.
that he's going through. So yeah, that
Yeah.
is really interesting. I wonder, like, when it comes back to sort of like the things you were talking about at the beginning and the trauma, was there any resolution at that time for you? Like, or did you just have to did you have to continue going to this church? Did you see this person again? Like,
That's a great question, Adam.
I mean, it's horrible, like, to think about, but how that might have affected sort of some of the feelings that you had afterwards, I imagine that could have.
So luckily, no. When we went to this place that was a church camp. So actually, if you ever wanted to look it up, it's called Creation, and it's like this 3 day.
God.
Creation.
Oh
Oh,
man, they
okay. So
did
there
those
you go. And
throughout. They did
it's a
that for
bunch.
the country. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a bunch of different churches that come to it. So luckily,
Yeah.
it wasn't anybody I knew, or
I
hopefully
never wanted
not.
to go because you couldn't take a freaking shower. There was
Oh,
mobbed and packed, and everyone that I knew that was a Christian, like, we're going to Creation, we're going to Creation. Like,
Go to see Toby Mac.
I'm a Jesus freak.
actually was the only music I
And I do
actually
like
liked from that one, though.
okay. I don't like the crowds. I don't like that I
Switchfoot,
can't take a
maybe.
shower. I don't
Yeah.
want to camp, and it freaked me out to be around all those people that were speaking in tongues and
Oh my
Yeah.
God. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. There's a reason I don't go to church anymore.
yeah.
So
Again, I'm just going to make
living,
this little disclaimer. I have no problem with Jesus and God. I have a problem with organized religion from my own lived experience.
And the way
actually
people use
same.
it.
Actually, same. I have no issue with anybody believing what they want to believe, worshiping how they want to worship, living their own lives, how they see fit within their own religion. I do not like the idea of organized religion because I feel like it strips people of their own freedom to think critically at their own actions. Because the
Right.
church is telling them this is okay, this isn't okay, this is okay, this isn't okay. And then if you actually research the history of Christianity, and I can only speak on Christianity because I grew up in the church,
Right.
and leaving the faith was because I had a faith crisis, did a lot of research trying to hold on to it, found out, oh, never mind. But that's just me personally. But that you're looking at the history, you can see the church had a lot of influence in what was in the book, what was out of the book, how things were interpreted, what was added. So I think organized religion is an issue for people that are more susceptible to needing that community to survive rather than interpreting what they think is right and wrong on their own. Like the deal with gay marriage. Do you think people would really have an issue with that if they weren't being told their whole lives that it's wrong? It's I don't know, because I think when it comes down to it, I think the majority of people that even are against it don't genuinely care what people do in their
Yeah.
own lives, but they're being told that those people will go to hell, and then they're on a vengeance to either condemn them or save them, and can't just leave them alone. So, well, that's a
Yeah,
whole
no,
nother tirade.
that goes with everything. And what's funny, and I've read some of the foundational texts of a few different religions, and almost all of them talk about the fact that essentially don't organize this. It's
Yes.
you look at Jesus and he's the organized parts really suck, and it's not about that. And as soon as that happens, then it becomes about power and greed and money and all that kind of stuff. And it's that you're never not going to have that, because it's the absolute power corrupts absolutely every time. So definitely. And bringing it back to horror, I think in recent years, books like American Rapture and
Oh my God.
so many other books, even the Candy Cane Kills Again, some of the religious horror that you see in this, it's obviously this generation of people that I think grew up in the 80s, 90s,
Yeah.
2000s. We are so traumatized by the things. We're also, and I don't know if it's again social media or the things that we now have as adults, that we're finally able to talk to each other and are like, wait, you went through that too? That was fucking bullshit. Uh, we're the first ones to really question it and say, I think this is evil.
And really, I can think that horror really is the one that does a lot more conversation starters, if you think about it, because horror is such a wide spectrum. It can go from things that are psychological thriller kind of horror. Think of the movie Seven. Some people think that's more psychological thriller, but there's some really horrific things in there, like the bodies and I don't want to do a spoiler, but the ending, if people haven't seen it.
It's in the box.
It can be like that, and then you can go all the way down into like torture and like things like Art the Clown, where he just kills for fun and it's super gory and stuff. And so it's like there's such a wide spectrum, but really there are certain movies that will turn, I guess you could say, social issues on their heads and are conversation starters. You don't really see too many movies outside of, like, I'd say horror and drama, and same with books, horror and drama movies that really turn social commentary on its head. And it really just gets people thinking and fired up, because like horror is like in your face about it. It's like, this bad shit happened and this is how people going through it are. I mean, even imaginary ideas about, like the zombie apocalypse, you'll follow people and like the struggles they go through. You'll see some people go insane, or you'll see people turn into murderers out of fear, or
Right.
it'll just,
They
it
make very
turns,
selfish decisions.
yes, yeah, or things that are out of character because they're pushed into a corner. And it's like it really is, I'd say horror overall really is an examination of human nature. And whether you
Yeah.
can find that in humans in books, like I feel like Stephen King, I know that everyone always like, oh, Stephen King's the king, but you know what? I think he is the king of showing people as monsters, because really, if you read most of his books, it's the people that are monsters.
Yeah, and it's like there might be this outside, you think of zombies and even like the original Night of the Living Dead, or you think of The Stand, or you think of,
Yeah,
some of the bigger, like, this force that's causing all of these things to happen. I
right.
think about The Walking Dead in the early seasons when it was really
Yes.
good. Like,
Hmm.
the zombies were scary, but it was scarier when they would walk into a place and there was someone that was alive there and you didn't know what
Yeah.
they were going to
The
do.
governor, the
Yeah,
governor was a terrifying
right?
person.
Yes.
People like that, and it was, yeah, even shows like that where it's just like, yeah, you even have this monster, but the things you're actually hating are those bad people. You don't like hate the zombies because it's their nature. Those are just monsters. You
They're
hate
Right.
those
predictable.
people.
They're going to be
Exactly. They
they're
are,
just like
yeah,
a bear coming after you, right?
yes. Yeah, the man versus bear thing. Yeah, it's like, because bears are predictable.
It is I'm going to butcher this, but it's like my favorite line from Pirates of the Caribbean. I don't know if it's 1, 2, whatever, but he's like, never trust, or a dishonest man is always dishonest. Honestly, it's the honest men that we could look it up.
Yeah, it's like
Let
you
me
never.
get it here
Yeah,
because it's so. It makes me think about a line from the Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, which was
that's the first
2003.
one. Yep.
Yep. So he says, Johnny Depp says, you can always trust a dishonest man to be dishonest. Honestly, it's the honest ones you want to watch out for because you never can predict when they're going to do something incredibly stupid. So
Oh,
Jack Sparrow.
yeah.
But that's what it always got me because it's like he's playing this paradox with the words and it's very confusing. And he's like hypnotizing me saying it, but it's like it is the honest ones, or it's like the ones that you wouldn't
Appear to
expect to
be.
be evil. So I
Yeah.
feel like you would replace that. It's like you can always trust an evil man to be evil.
Right.
Honestly, it's the
Supposedly good man.
the supposedly good ones that you want to watch out for because you never can predict when they're going to do something incredibly stupid
Or
100%.
evil or mean or
Yeah.
whatever.
I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of horror books and movies use people of authority as like the bad ones, because we're supposed to be able to trust them. I mean, this leans into our
Yeah.
political talks too, Adam, but we're supposed to be able to trust the people of authority because, they are supposed to be able to take care of everybody. So when they don't, it's like everyone is like, oh my God, why would they blah, blah, blah? It's like, but there's a reason why people say slimy politicians and all these different things. Cause now it's like people understand that politicians aren't to be trusted, but because they're in a position of authority, you have to have a level of trust with them. So
Yeah.
it's like,
Or there's generally nothing you can do
It's
about
given.
for years.
yeah, yeah. And so that makes me think of the governor, where he's the governor
Yeah.
of the city when we were talking about The Walking Dead, back to that. And he's, position of authority. He's even called the governor, which immediately makes you think of someone who's trying to take care of the city, take care of the people.
Right.
Just that word alone elicits respect, basically,
Yeah.
because they're in charge. But he turns out to be crappy human and does a
Right.
lot of things that are awful. And it's just like, that's just one example of horror using human nature to elicit a reaction, because we can really all relate to that, because we've had some level of people that we have trusted that have let us down in some shape or form or level.
Right, right. But, there's these levels within society that are elevated: officers, pastors, teachers,
Yeah.
that you think even more good than,
They wouldn't be able to get into
yes,
that position if
yes,
they weren't good. Like, obviously, it's not true, but like that's what you're taught as a kid, right? Like, if you're in trouble for this, the police officer, and go ask for help if you're lost, right? It's
Exactly.
like, yeah. And it's like when those systems and when those people let you down, it can feel like you're falling, right? It's like you're drowning almost.
Which, if you think about it, no matter how many stories also come out against coaches and teachers and pastors and police officers, still mentioning those words of authority for the most
yes,
part, for, I would say, well, hold on, I would say for most privileged people, like I can kind of get into that, but for most privileged people, when you mention those levels of authority and there's figures of authority, still the idea of them still elicits safety to most people, even though I would say those are some
uh,
of the worst offenders, right? It's people that
yeah.
know you.
And at the same time, there's some of the best people too.
Yes,
It's
yeah, yeah,
like both ends of the spectrum, right? It's like the most self-sacrificing, the people that do the most, willing to give the most as community leaders. And there's people
yes,
out there doing absolutely fantastic work. And then there's also just rotten people. And I often say, like, in this area, there's like the downtown York area, the police commissioner is just incredible. I mean, the level of transparency, the amount of community involvement, like the way, like, all of them that just like operate, it's this like feeling that I've never ever felt or seen from police before. And it like
yes,
really makes me like super proud. And I will say my brother works there as a police officer, and my other brother is the chaplain there. But outside of that, I mean, they don't really get showcased. It's the police commissioner that's like showing everything. But then there's
right,
this other area, maybe 2-3 miles up the road, northern, and it's like they love to pull people over. They love to give people a
yes,
hard time. Like,
yeah,
it's like they attract for candidates like the cops with the chip on their shoulder, like when they're running people through. And then,
I think,
York
yeah.
City is like looking for, like, I want empathetic and like socially, trying to do stuff. Like, they've done such a good job. They went and trained people in other, departments in other states to help with things. But then you have these other ones that are just like, this is who we want. Like, if you're not an asshole, you can't work here. You have to love it.
But that commissioner, I think it's no surprise that that commissioner is a person of color, right?
Correct.
That's a black
fair.
man that is doing that. And it's like, I think that there are so many people that I don't know what his story is, but I'm guessing he grew up with a police force that didn't act like him.
Well, okay. So here's why I feel so passionately about that, because besides being a sociology major, I have a dual major in criminal justice, and community policing. When it works the way it's supposed to, they are supposed to be the safe places. They are supposed to people.
Right, yeah,
And it should be that there's this like net that prevents these original or new offenders, these ones that are just entering into crime, that they set up community policing with other people within that community that are not working for the police, that basically help to sort of
Lend legitimacy.
yes,
Yeah.
and retard like their behavior. Or it's basically, there's like the whole word of like they're socially being like worked through and having that behavioral management through like just the community members itself. But
yeah,
even in early policing, like the uniforms were changed from looking like the colonial army so that it wouldn't come off like that, and
yeah,
just think that, with any organization, things can be done for good or for bad. But I do think that, I mean, the one thing that I can say for Muldrow, who's the commissioner, is, I mean, he's on social media all the time. If there's a shooting or something like that, he's letting the whole community know. If somebody, it's like this level of transparency. And I would even not say that. I would say access to police, where I feel like police have always in the past, like, held their arm out that, like, you're in trouble. What did you do wrong? In so many books, I mean, it's just the harassment, right? And this
right,
level of like success and involvement is just I wish more police officers and departments were like that.
Well, he's unfortunately the exception that proves the rule.
Yes, absolutely.
You know? And what's interesting, and you know, it comes to a lot of the things that we're dealing with right now with immigration and all these kinds of things, where if you look at the actual numbers and you look at, you know, the statistics of things, it's like community policing works, crime goes down, all that kind of stuff. Yet it's not popular, you know, with
Right, because
politicians.
right, to have a punitive approach is much more satisfying to a lot well, yeah, but I think it's also a lot more satisfying. I mean, I remember telling you the other day that I was watching all this flooding that was happening here, and this guy records himself like laughing at someone like in a car getting swept away by a flash flood that happened really fast. He's like, "You dumbass.
That's
You're so
awful.
stupid." And I'm like, and that's the thing is like, I think people like retribution. I think it makes them feel good that like someone's getting, again, it's not a proponent for rehabilitation.
And that's funny because I think that that's what sometimes people outside looking in at horror fans think that a horror fan is.
You're
right?
salivating.
That you're like, oh,
pain.
I can't wait for something terrible to happen to these people. When really, that's like as far, because everything that I've seen from the horror community and authors and all this kind of stuff, the empathy that is there is just huge. So that's a really interesting thing, because I think that the people that act like that oftentimes are the ones that are so straight-laced and so like, you know, would not look at something like horror, because horror is, again, that one that looks at the sort of like what makes a person and what will they do if you put them in this position, in this situation. Are they going to make the good choice? Are they going to make the selfish choice? You know, what is going to happen? And you know, I think those people see everything so black and white that it doesn't appeal to them.
And we've had this conversation where this is just my theory, AJ, like can't prove it, but I feel like, all right, first of all, I'm like try to be a very inclusive people. So as I say that, like, I'm a liberal, I'm a Democrat, like have a lot, like all my family seems to be conservative, right? But when I look at it, I feel like most liberals are neurodivergent and most conservatives typical. And so they don't see the shades of gray. There is no mitigating circumstances. There is no other like conditions. And there is goodness, bringing it back to the police thing again. Cause like, I can't even tolerate to drive past a police car at night with the flashing light because I'm overly stimulated, the noise, the lights, and I can't handle it. So thank goodness there are people that are neurotypical, but it's this thing that I feel like they don't have a high emotional intellect, right? The high EQ. I would love to see where that all lands on a spectrum, because it's like they can't have empathy. And that is really, like Wendy Dalrymple shared several times today, like reading is resistance. But we've been talking about how reading is building empathy. And that's a lot of times why they don't want you to read, is because then, well, I might have compassion or understanding for someone else versus, you know, I don't care if it's not happening to me. I'll turn a blind eye, do what you want.
Yeah. Which is like, honestly, it's really weird at the political climate that we're in, I feel like, because like, I don't know if it's like totally millennials. No, I guess as millennials, we're more on the blue side. I guess that would kind of make sense. But I know people that are, you know, grew up in a very tiny conservative town. And so I'd say most of the people I went to school with are conservative. But it's like we grew up with books like The Hunger Games or like Divergent, you know, like books that are literally about like resistance, you know? And so it's just like we grew up with things like that. And
How are you not paying attention?
Well, I love to read some nonfiction, and I got this book last night on my Kindle, and it's called How Politics Became Our Identity. And it's the psychology behind political partisanship, the kind of research that will change not just how you think about the world, but how you think about yourself. And it really goes into like the political polarization and how it's moved, like how we've ended up with these identities and things like that. And I'm just fascinated for how it all unfolded, because it wasn't always like that, right? So those kind of climate things, but you're right. Like it's been shown in those books. And I think you think, oh, well, that's just fiction. That could never really happen. And now you think of like Margaret Atwood, where like The Handmaid's Tale, and this is the same, and this is the same. And
I know.
I've never read that or watched the series. I'm scared, I'll be honest.
But it's like, it's like watching the slowest, most boring, stupid apocalypse that could ever happen. like, I was always hoping it would be zombies or, nuclear
we
war.
would know how to deal with that. We'd at least know how to navigate that,
Yeah,
like
or at least it
double
would be
tap,
over.
cardio.
Right. So I'd be dead very fast and it'd be over. Like, because I'm not doing cardio.
I was quoting Zombieland though. Like those are some of my favorite zombie movies.
I watched that. I remember watching that movie so well, and being like, "Okay, it's good to know. If I see these, just stop because it's like it's not worth it. It's not going to happen." So, but it's like with this, it's just like everybody's looking at it, everybody's commenting, and it's like I never thought half of the people would be rooting for the apocalypse. You know what I mean? And it's just like it's just so infuriating and stupid, and it's just like just have some compassion, like just understand that other people they want to live just like you do, and they're like, no, I'd rather them die so that I can have $5 more. You know what I mean? It's like whatever it is.
But there's always the othering though. It's always been this way that you always have someone to hate. And if you look at like how Saddam Hussein like built his cult of personality, you have to have someone to hate. The same thing with Hitler. Like, and that is whether it's liberals or it's immigrants or, I mean, in this particular scenario, it's lots of things that we hate. Like, and I say we as in like America, but I mean, there's got to be someone who's America. Yeah. It's always got to be someone that's taking your stuff and getting more than you. And,
it's
never your fault. It's always someone else's, which means that you can always villainize. And
yes. And that's part of how they can control is because we're going to get rid of this. We're going to fix that. We're going to punish this. Right. And so you just get this almost like mob mentality on like a social, like national level where comes across as patriotism, but it's really nationalism. And it's funny because they can like tap into it and like looking at it, it's so stupid, but it's like, okay, so you had 4 years to do it. And it's like, we didn't do it enough. We just got to do it even more. No, it's not. We got away with it in the first 4 years. We can get away with even more. No, I just mean like that's how it feels to me. No, yeah, that's what the people in power are saying that, but the person that's in, whatever you want to say it, in Michigan, and they've lost their job and all that kind of stuff, and they're being told, if you vote for me, I'm going to help you, and then 4 years later, you're not helped. They're like, oh, that's because they're still coming. We got to do it even more. It's like, and that's when, alligator Alcatraz and that stuff comes, and it's like, no, you're not. You're just not helping that person. Our exchange just asked yesterday to Annabelle, who's 12, do you know what alligator Alcatraz is? She's in like Rome and she's 16. And I'm like, she's like, yeah, like the world is talking about this. And I wonder, sometimes you get to see like those periodicals with like political cartoons and commentary from other countries. But I mean, it just makes you think like World War II. It's like there was the obvious bad guy, right? Yes. It's like World War III. Are we the fucking bad guy? I think so.
We are. Yeah, we are the bad guys. But that just like still, man, because I mean, since we're talking about that, I mean, it really is horrific, isn't it? Like it's honestly horrific to see people cheering on. I mean, this really is like a dystopian novel currently, right now. It's like you really are seeing people cheering on people getting ripped from their families and getting deported, even though they are here legally. Like the numbers are something like 93% of all that have been detained or deported, like did not have any violent criminal record. And then like I think it was like 80% of them had 0 criminal records going in. Wow. And it's like it really is that horrific dystopian novel of people cheering on people getting ripped from their families, people cheering on getting their rights stripped from them. Like it's like what they cheer for is what makes this point in time horrific to me. And it's just like, which is hard because like when we're talking about like the trauma where it's like I always felt like I carried around the darkness inside me. Well, the darkness is out there now. And I'm like seeing everybody's freaking darkness.
And they're not even, there is no shame anymore. Yeah. There is no, let's not say the quiet part. It's like, let's say what we want to say as loudly as we want. Yeah. And it was that girl on TikTok that I love, that tall girl. And she was saying like, oh no, it was here all the time. Like it was always in those people, but Donald Trump's presidency gave permission for all those things to come out. And I can remember within the very beginning, and I'm sure you remember this too, Adam, for the moment that he got elected, we have a technical school here in
2016.
Yeah. And there's not a lot of diversity in our county, but where there was definitely in the technical school. That all these
blue collar jobs that they're
local high schools fed into, all that. And they made national news because they were going around saying this is fucking Trump's country now and
going
get
up
out.
To the Hispanic students and yelling, build the wall.
And and even in elementary school right now, the number of people that, okay, I'm going to start back here. There's a child, and I'm still going to call them a child, that we knew that was in high school with our oldest daughter.
Yeah.
Who would say, other Black people have told me I'm allowed to use the N-word. I've been given permission. So he says it all the time as much as he wants. And so we eventually, basically, our daughter distanced that friendship significantly from that. Despite having multiple times of going around and around and around of trying to change thought behavior and whatever, right? And then our youngest daughter, who is just leaving elementary school, the number of kids that she could name that go around saying the N-word all the time. And I'm not saying the Nazi one. I'm saying the,
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
And I'm just what is the fascination? Why is this such a surge right now? And again, it feeds back into this. Yeah. And I'm like, and Adam, you had a student that drew the Nazi symbol.
We were doing a science experiment with popsicle sticks, and then looks down and he's made the swastika with the popsicle stick. Yeah.
Yeah.
And guess what his parents were?
Police officer.
No. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's the thing is that kind of thing is being taught in either A, in the home, or B, in an environment, either by their family or their friends. That's where they're learning that, and it's well, I know, you know what? Actually, we can't really say that too much anymore. There's the manosphere, there's social media. All they need is just access to TikTok, and you'll see that everywhere. I mean, there's
it's true. And then the algorithm, you watch one or two out of curiosity, and the algorithm starts pumping it, right?
Oh, I know. I can't go on to any sort of right-wing media, even if I'm curious, because then it messes up my algorithm, and I don't want to see that. It's not that I'm just funny dogs, please. Yeah.
And that's just so crazy because I remember, that's such a great point though, AJ, because, at one point, again, 2015, 2016, I'm having these conversations with a family member of mine who is incredibly conservative. And they were like, why, if you're saying all this is happening, then why aren't I seeing it? I'm reading these things. And I was like, and that was the first time. And I, was in marketing and I could say, do you understand that you're built into a specific audience and that news is designed to the newsroom? We would often have sales meetings with the editors and journalists. And we would say okay, how many page views did this get? Okay, we need to get more page views. They had a page view budget the way that we had a sales budget. And the more page views we had allowed us to justify how much we would sell the advertising prices for, right? And so I was explaining to her that the more that the content can be curated, whether that's an ad or a, editorial piece, or a lot of times where people don't even understand it's an advertorial, which shows up and looks like an editorial piece, but it's really an advertisement, that it's directed towards you, right? And I was like, we're not seeing the same things. And she was like, holy shit, it had never occurred to her that we were being isolated. And I think that's how we get to a lot of this right now because of the technology and the isolationism within these buckets. Now, I love advertising. I love audience. I love algorithms. Social media and all that has really impacted my life for the better of learning and discovering things with perimenopause and ADHD and all kinds of, right? But it can also sow division, and they count on that, right? Hello, Cambridge Analytica.
Yeah. But you were saying, Lou, you can find things about perimenopause and ADHD, stuff like that. One of the best things about social media, plus the worst thing, is really that you can find your people. You can find anybody to find camaraderie with. And that can either help you or hurt you in life, because you can either find camaraderie in other people, that maybe other women that were undiagnosed with ADHD, because that is
Yeah.
was severely
Yeah.
undiagnosed with us girls.
Yeah.
And so that's like, oh, camaraderie. Okay, it's not just me. This was a big thing. Oh, that's your symptoms. That's mine too. You can feel better about yourself. But then you can
Yeah.
also find camaraderie, like in the manosphere, where like Joe Rogan, even though he's trying to backtrack right now, like, like Joe Rogan and like the Flagrant
Like
podcast
hard.
with like Andrew Schultz and stuff, like Theo Vaughn, the Broadcast, right? The manosphere, the Andrew Tates. You can, if
Oh,
you
Lordy.
have some sort of misogynistic view that you feel like you haven't been able to say out loud, you're going to find that camaraderie
Yes.
in being
Yes.
able to feel like you are comfortable
It's
saying it out loud.
normal.
Because
They're going to say, oh,
exactly,
that's normal.
even though there's,
That
yeah, yeah,
that's okay.
sorry, go ahead.
It's approved. I'm not the only one
Yes,
that has these feelings, right? Like,
yeah. And then they're loud about it, They're very aggressive about it. They're like, this is what it is. And then in the way they spew it, is if it's like cold, hard truth and it's other people's problem, that they can't accept that about you. It's
yeah,
other
yeah,
women's
yeah,
issue for feeding into feminism of wanting a career, it's the LGBTQs that they want to be different so bad and choose that way. It's everybody else's issue for not thinking like these manosphere people. And then they make them feel comfortable as if they are the only ones that have the truth and everyone else needs to fall in line. Otherwise, they're wrong.
So again, I really like to have like decent conversation on differences, right? If we can be
Right.
decent about it, like I always want to try to learn and be like, okay, I think you seem like a really good person. I really like you, but why are we so fundamentally different on this? And
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
like, and if I ever like, I'm going to try to convert someone to be more empathetic or whatever, like it's my job to be essentially the salesperson to show them that way. Right.
Right.
So having this conversation, and family member of mine says, well, I don't really agree with that DE&I thing. I don't know if I want a doctor of mine, being a DE&I. And I was like, hold on. I was like, I think you're conflating DE&I with affirmative action, like
Yeah.
of how that was branded, right? Of how
Yes.
the dirty word
Yeah.
that affirmative act. She's like, well, isn't it the same thing? And I'm like, it is not. And she's like, well, tell me what it is. And I was like, well, I'm on the DE&I committee for work. And I was like, and I went through and it explained like, and I was like, but also like, did you know that like, being able to have ramps or like places to pump your breasts, if you're a nursing mom, like a private room for those things, like when you go back to work, like, did you know that's all part of DE&I? And she was like, well, no, I don't think that like ramps outside, that should have been covered by like the American Disability Act or, whatever. And I was like, yeah, like at a post office and things like that. I was like, but not for a regular business. I was like,
Yes.
our older daughter was involved in a really bad accident. And I was like saying she was okay, like, physically, but I was like, suppose like she wasn't. I was like, but she's bright and smart and great. And I was like, but do you think she shouldn't be allowed to have this job because the building doesn't want to be compliant to, let me edit that out. I don't want to share that about her. I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's okay.
So I was like, but I'm just thinking about someone that is,
Well, even like your mom, that's an older person,
right?
That, not discriminating against someone for being an older person.
Their age, like that there's so much wisdom to learn and that there's still so much life to get right. But I was just saying, like, why should a person, because, they have a knee issue or something like that, they can't climb these stairs and there's no way to get into it, like, because a business isn't forced to do it, right? Or whatever. And I'm like,
yeah.
And because it depends on the state. Yeah.
So the language is so coded so that it's weaponized and used against. Now,
yes. Yeah.
I think that I wanted to share a little bit further back that Parable of the Sower, Octavia Butler,
yeah,
like she actually opens up that book where it is like starting with the wildfires that was like happening in California. Like at some point they were like, did she predict all this? Like it was like word for word, like your action for action, right? So it's a very much like a dystopian, but like also like adjacent to The Walking Dead. Like there's no zombies, but it's like, you're out for yourselves. Like you find your clan and your people and like what's happening and stuff, because it does devolve into like full chaos and everything. but I just felt like, there's writers that have imagined these things. And I know like tonight I was on Novel Nightmare listening to Chuck Wendig, and he was saying like, well, I didn't actually mean to write about a pandemic, but I was writing about the pandemic, and a lot of that came through. And so there's so much amazing art that comes through authors that you almost have to wonder if there is some divinity to it of what they're writing. Like it's just too uncanny, I guess, at times.
Tremblay was one at the same time,
right?
So Survivor Song, yeah,
isn't that? But like, I just want to delve into that. Like, do we think that there's like
a zeitgeist or something that's coming,
something
like some sort of
like that comes through to like that, and that also just makes you think about like, don't read the books. And all these people that were like, why do we have to get political about the books? And it's like, reading has always been political and resistant. And so I'm just wondering if like sometimes like, these are like, maybe they are unaware or not, but they're messengers of this word and these things. And we read it and we learn. And then these scenarios so similar come up, like, I don't know. It's just sometimes things are so, you're like, that's so creepy that they were able to like nail this.
Yeah. And I'm definitely open to things like that. I'm one of those people that I feel like it's arrogant to 100% believe in anything, like full stop, without like, and it's just like, we don't know everything. So to act like we do, or to completely believe or disbelieve something, I feel like isn't keeping an open mind. So like, yeah, I'm totally open to that there's maybe some sort of divinity, or at the very least like some sort of clarity, or maybe like there's that study that we only use a certain percent of our brains. Maybe artistic people actually are able to tap into another part of their brain, or a certain more percent that allows them to do these kind of things, like who knows.
Well, it's very interesting because I always reference this book, The Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, and how she just talks about like an idea has to be born and it will go to another person, for a writing concept or whatever. If it wants to be born, it will find someone to birth it. And so that's kind of, whether it's divinity or not, it's more like, is there something greater good within the universe that delivers this idea to an author that's like, they don't realize it, but they're writing about it, and then it impacts. And then Adam, you're going to share about the telepathy tapes?
No, I won't. No, man, that's a whole other can of worms.
When you smiled,
do a part two.
Listeners, who have not listened to the telepathy tapes,
it's a podcast. Yes,
give it 3 episodes, and I swear to God, on your whole life,
it will change your entire
change your perspective on people and life and autistic people. And like, I don't even want to say anything because if I say anything further, it'll spoil it. It's fantastic. But we are the dumb ones. Even though if you're like, basically the more nonverbal, the more, if you'd say higher, non-functioning autistic, the person, the more gifted they actually are, almost like godlike, which is crazy.
Yeah. So
check it out and let us know.
That is a very good
I wrote it down.
However,
is that so? Where can you said it's Telepathy Tapes podcast? Where can I find that? Just like anywhere?
Podcast, Spotify, wherever you want to.
They're trying to get funding right now to do an actual like documentary. Maybe there's been updates since I listened to it.
Yeah,
because it's. I mean, every time you listen to it, it's like, no fucking way.
Yeah, and
and she does it with like studies and tests, so that like basically here's what she's doing. Like the idea is that if you're an autistic person, severely autistic, nonverbal, the kinds that are, the way that she describes it at the beginning is like the ones that, are smearing poop on the wall, like that level of inability, right? They have been able to read their parents' minds forever. And so they'll
speak to them telepathically. Yeah.
And so they'll sit in like a different part of the house where there's no way they could see her. They'll say, hey, text your friend in another state to text you like
a math problem. Yeah.
That, or like an Uno card of like, they'll pull a card of like Blue 7 or something. They'll be in the other side of the room and they'll be like, they'll have them, it's called spelling, where they can like, write it on a pad, and they'll be like 7, and they can know every single time. Like they know.
Yeah. It's not like 50-50. It's like 99%.
Yes.
Every time.
I haven't. And then.
Yes. Cortez is very interested.
And then, like if they have crystals in the house, like they're like, they walk in, they immediately just go find it. Like they can feel the frequencies for it. But at some point, and the one thing I wanted to touch on, Adam, because you were talking at Books and Brews with our friends Alex and Dave about how you did the ghost hunting.
Yes.
And you were like, oh, have you ever heard of this? Well, basically you scan through radio stations, whatever. Mm-hmm. But they talk about it in the telepathy tapes that I think it was Lucille Ball that she had gotten a filling and the radio frequencies were coming through her tooth.
There's an episode of Erie, Indiana where he did that, except he could hear what dogs were saying.
Okay, well, this is like not fictional.
Yes.
No,
That's what
I love the paranormal stuff, by the way. That's something me and Adam actually haven't talked about, but I am all about the paranormal stuff. So like I'm feeling it.
But I just found it to be like really, really fascinating about, you know, who we misjudge in life and their abilities. And we would say, oh, this person's worthless, or, you know, they have no good qualities, or they need to be in a home. I mean, you think about back to like when, you know, these people would have just been sent away versus now there's
20
like
years ago, they would
stores quiet and parks that have accommodate like all that, right? And it's still not where it needs to be, but it's getting better. But to find out that they're actually just the most brilliant, empathetic, wonderful human beings, like I don't know. It's, and Adam, you've worked, you've done some teaching within
I've
that,
taught,
and you, yes, and you felt like there were moments.
Yeah, there were connections where it would be like, you know, someone that no one else could work with, and it was like all of a sudden you'd sit with them, and it's like whether it was me or another teacher, it was like, okay, this person was on their wavelength, and whether it was like they could speak with them telepathically, and you didn't even know it. But it would definitely be that kind of thing. It was like
your energy didn't disrupt them.
And then you just kind of knew they wanted this. They want, you know, this would make them happy. Like this would do that, you know, they want to show you this and that kind of thing. And it definitely, you know, I didn't experience things to the extent that they talk about on that podcast, but you could tell these kids were so special. Yeah, absolutely.
They're your favorite.
Yeah, yes, they were. If I wasn't in a gen ed class, I would go back to get certified for autistic support for sure. What I was going to say was actually Josh Mallerman's Watching Evil Dead. He talks about how basically
I was really off track there.
You know, it's okay.
We're swirling. It's okay. We're swirling and we're moving.
Yeah, we don't normally we do have a pretty good
you love to talk
on the
about
same
this.
page.
So I was like, okay, I get to say it this time.
Go for it.
When you talk about the sort of divine or whatever you want to call it, okay, that whatever it is that you're writing about, this creative sort of thing, you know, it goes back to the muses and that kind of stuff of like this outside thing having some sort of creative effect on you. He talks about in that book where he sort of like says, my eyes roll back in my head and suddenly there's 60 pages written. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of artists talk about that. And it's like where, you know, AJ, you said we're only using a certain percentage of your brain. It's like when you're accessing that, you know, it does. Maybe it is this kind of thing of like you're tapping into something that you don't even know exists and you don't even know you're doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like it's a pretty cool idea, you know, that you're saying there, Rebecca. So I think that, you know,
I mean, we just heard that this weekend. Who was that was saying that? It wasn't Jonathan Jans. It might have been, but he was like, I just
Yeah.
No, it definitely happened again. Like, I get it, but like the same person was saying that where they're like, you know what? We interviewed them. They said, I'm not a pantser. Like I normally plan things out and then I have to go back in and try to figure out like, it doesn't matter. It's whatever. It's just that, yes, it's the idea that
watch our Instagram, the interview will be on there. So.
Watch. No, that was Brian McCullough. No, I'm joking. It definitely, someone said it this weekend.
It wasn't Marcus, was it? No.
I don't.
Anyway,
I know. We had like 20 interviews
when we get to the podcast.
Let's edit that part out.
Yeah.
That was weird.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
You made it weird. I'm sorry.
Sorry, AJ.
No, I love weird. I think normal is boring, so I like weird.
So, you know, to sort of tie everything together with a bow, you know, it's sort of, we have very individual and we have very like macro tragedies, you know, traumas, this kind of stuff. And, you know, using whether it's fiction, nonfiction, you know, using sort of these books and literature and that kind of stuff as a way to, you know, not just cope, but sort of transmute and turn, you know, these things into wisdom and knowledge and that kind of stuff. It's like, I think that the difference between someone that goes through something, and to get personal again, someone like my mother who has been through horrible abuse,
Yeah.
and instead of doing something like that, she internalized it.
Hardened her.
It's hardened her. It's made her angry. It's made her bitter. And she perpetuates that. And we see that in the cycles of abuse that happen all the time, not just, with that. But
Yeah.
it's like the people that don't do that because, they're either taught not to, or they don't want to, or it's hard work.
I don't even know. Like as a gardener, I think about, you get a packet of seeds, they all have potential energy inside of them to become something, but they don't all, you can plant bulbs or you can plant from seed and they don't all grow the same. Sometimes they're a dud, whatever. And I'm thinking like, you can put multiple people, AKA the seeds, in the same climate and conditions and soil, and they're not all going to behave the same way.
Nope.
And I think like that's the impact that, sometimes, and there's enough of certain things happening in certain ways that, you'll find those people that, are like, no, this is normal. It's okay that we act like this and whatever. So I think the way you said that, AJ, it's like for good or for bad, you'll find your people. And, it's great with the horror community because, a lot of our listeners and guests, it's like you've been othered or you haven't been able to connect with people that were like you. And so through the technology and social and whatnot, you're finding these things and even like these awesome events that are happening. But again, we're choosing to use it for good, where now this definitely was Brian McCauley. There's not many things in life that can't be fixed through love and community. And I believe that.
I love that. I love that. I feel like that's like in the world right now, we're sorely missing the love part. A lot of people have found their own communities, but if there isn't love in that community, then it just becomes destructive.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I'm going to have to take it back to, the Bible, because that's, the definition of love is patient, love is kind, love does not boast, love does not, like, I don't remember any further past that. But, if you would actually put out definitions of what is love, it's like, love is not arrogant. It's it's slow to anger, things like that. And it's like, you're right. There is a lot of people that have community, but you could say a KKK has community, or, whatever, people that love alligator Alcatraz, that they have community, but it doesn't mean that they have love. And I think you're right. That is the missing thing, right? Because love places a balm over your heart, your actions, love is forgiving. Like, we overlook our friends' red flags, right? We overlook their behaviors because that's our friend. We're not as judgmental. We're much more forgiving. Whereas like for other people that might do the same thing, that's not our friend, we're much more quick to hold them accountable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. It's the love.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Now you solve world problems. I thank you.
You're welcome.
We were just waiting for you to get to it.
Damn.
No, but
I
I
have
do
my
think
profound moments, but it takes about 80 minutes to get there.
I do think it is the people that go through, like they say, you grow through what you go through or whatever, but it is the people that are like, often it's the people that have the least amount of money that are the most generous with it, because they know what it's like to go without, right? It's the people that
100%.
Yeah. And that's where I see you coming in and I think a lot of times in certain books and things, you see that, you feel that, right? And it's like, because you can empathize.
100%. I find, I especially like characters that I find troubled or have been through something on their own. I like to find, I don't want to say the weak spots. How am I going to explain that? But I like to find where I can find pieces of myself in there and then root for them. Because it's like, it's hard to root for yourself, but it's easy to root for other people. And I think like horror helps us kind of do that. That maybe we'll find pieces of ourselves or our traumas within them, and then we'll root for them.
The redeeming qualities is what you're seeking out intentionally.
Well, that's interesting too, though, because when you say like you won't root for yourself, but when you find pieces of yourself in these characters, like you will, and that can sort of turn it back to say like, no, I am worth rooting for too.
100%.
After seeing that, so like that's awesome.
And that is a roundabout way of saying how horror has been cathartic. For me, at least.
I'll tell you right now, this is one of my favorite episodes. You can bookmark that. Like, I feel like I just went into all kinds of different things tonight. And I mean, it's not that I'm never not chaotic on the show, but like I got to talk about a lot of my favorite things to talk about and experiences. And I just appreciate to you that you've been so willing to be so transparent, vulnerable, and open and authentic, because it allows us to have a connection like this, even though we haven't met in person. You know, it's just like, yep, me too. I get you. I see you. So thank you for the love and community.
Yeah, well, we haven't met in person yet. Hopeful for one day would be great. But yeah, I know I'm really happy that we've done this too, because and not just like so we can get to know each other a lot better, very out loud in front of other people, but also it's just like we can I feel like the more when people are open, other people are more apt to feeling like they can be open too. So, I think it's
There are
good
so
to
many
be
people
open.
that are going to have gone through something
Yeah.
unfortunately very similar that
Yeah.
will say, "Oh my God, I heard that and I thought I was alone," and they're not.
Well,
You
Adam
know,
told me I couldn't comment on anything evangelical right now. Adam told me like,
oh,
Cortez.
it's the devil.
Yeah.
The devil's in that dog.
Yeah. Adam told me I couldn't comment on anything evangelical anymore because he already had to like bleep out 30 minutes of my tirade because he said, you gave names, you gave times.
Oh
Like,
no.
he's like, I don't want to but if you ever want to talk offline
Yeah,
about some of this, I'd be more than happy to share some additional experiences.
Oh,
absolutely.
totally. Me too. I mean,
Yeah.
me too. Me and Adam chat, like find my DMs. You too. You find my
Yep.
DMs. That'd be great.
So now we're gonna say where to find you on Instagram, which is gonna
Can other people DM you if they want to share their experience?
it's gonna force you to post more because now your name's gonna
Oh,
be
I
out there.
know, I know. I went, well, okay. We'll take this out, but just FYI, I actually am having a cancer scare right now. So I haven't been posting a lot. Yeah, I actually had a radiology appointment a few days, or was it Thursday? So I'm waiting on results for that. So FYI,
Oh
that's
my
actually
God,
why I
not
went
this
silent for a little
right.
bit. It's okay. It might be nothing. We'll,
You
obviously bleep this out,
just
but
call me a
yeah.
fucking asshole, okay?
Yeah, you're
Sorry.
fucking
I actually thought about telling you that the other day that, hey, I promise I'm not all of a sudden ghosting you. I just haven't really been on much. And if I'm on, I'm like scrolling through, haha, that's funny, that's a laugh, and then I get back on. So it's like, yeah, just FYI. But okay, so yeah, if people want to see my Bookstagram that I do post here and there, but I'll post random funny things or I'll post thoughts too, so it's not just books. My handle is Reader Reader. It's a play on my name because my last name is Reader with two E's. So it's REEDER_READER. So
I
much
love
fun.
that.
Love it. So yes, definitely keep us in the know of what's going on. Any way that we can support you for that, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
will
I know.
send you inappropriate memes because that is my love language.
Yes.
I love that. Be prepared to be like, oh, she's got dark humor too. Not just dark trauma. She got dark
I
humor.
do. In fact, I sent this one the other day to Adam. I was at the nail salon
Oh my God.
and it's Jesus Christ sitting there getting his nails done, but like the ones that have poked through his hands.
Yes. So they're putting nail polish on the spikes through his hands. Yeah, and he's
Oh my
saying, Jesus,
God.
what fantastic. That is perfect.
That's really good part. But yeah, okay.
Yes, that's the way to end it right there. I love it.
Yeah, there we go.
Well, thank you. This was wonderful as I expected, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, sounds
Bye-bye.
good. Thanks for having me,
Bye.
guys. Bye.
Yep. Bye.